you indicate that pursuant to Justice Department regulations that you submitted a confidential report to the Attorney General at the conclusion of the investigation. What I'd like you to confirm is the report that you did, that is the subject matter of this hearing, was to the Attorney General.
Yes.
You also state in this opening statement that you threw overboard the word collusion because it's not a legal term. You would not conclude because collusion was not a legal term.
Well, it depends on how you want to use the word. In the general parlance, people can think of it that way, but if you're talking about in the criminal statute arena, you can't, because it really is much more aptly and accurately described as conspiracy.
Right, so your words are it's not a legal term, so you didn't put it in your conclusion, correct? That's what you're.
That's correct.
Mr. Mueller, I want to talk about your powers and authorities. Now, the Attorney General and the appointment order gave you powers and authorities that reside in the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General has no ability to give you powers and authority greater than the powers and authority of the Attorney General, correct?
No, I don't believe, I think that is correct.
Mr. Mueller, I want to focus on one word in your report. It's the second to the last word in the report. It's exonerate. The report states, accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it does not exonerate him. Now, in the judiciary hearing, in your prior testimony, you've already agreed with Mr. Radcliffe that exonerate is not a legal term, that there is not a legal test for this. So I have a question for you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, does the Attorney General have the power or authority to exonerate? And what I'm putting up here is the United States Code. This is where the Attorney General gets his power, and the Constitution, and the annotated cases of these, which we've searched. We even went to your law school, because I went to Case Western, but I thought maybe your law school teaches it differently, and we got the criminal law textbook from your law school. Mr. Mueller, nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate. There's no office of exoneration at the Attorney General's office. There's no certificate at the bottom of his desk. Mr. Mueller, would you agree with me that the Attorney General does not have the power to exonerate?
I'm going to pass on that.
Why?
Because it embroils us in a legal discussion, and I'm not prepared to do a legal discussion in that arena.
Well, Mr. Mueller, you would not disagree with me when I say that there is no place that the Attorney General has the power to exonerate, and he's not been given that authority. You would not.
Yeah, and I'm not going to. I take your question.
Great. Well, the one thing that I guess is that the Attorney General probably knows that he can't exonerate either. And that's the part that kind of confuses me. Because if the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, then you don't have the power to exonerate, and I believe he knows he doesn't have the power to exonerate.
Great
so this
point.
is the part that I don't understand. If your report is to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, and he does not, and he knows that you do not have that power, you don't have to tell him that you're not exonerating the president. He knows this already. So then that kind of changed the context of the report.
No, we included in the report for exactly that reason. He may not know it, and he should know it.
So you believe that the Attorney Bill Barr
Oh my
believes that
God.
somewhere in the hallways of the Department of Justice there's an office of exoneration?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, I believe he knows, and I don't believe you put that in there for Mr. Barr. I think you put that in there for exactly what I'm going to discuss next, and that is, so the Washington Post yesterday, when speaking of your report, the article said Trump could not be exonerated of trying to obstruct the investigation itself. Trump could not be exonerated. Now that statement is correct, Mr. Mueller, isn't it, in that no one can be exonerated? The reporter wrote this, that this reporter can't be exonerated. Mr. Mueller, you can't be exonerated. In fact, in our criminal justice system, there is no power or authority to exonerate. Now, this is my concern, Mr. Mueller. This is the headline on all of the news channels while you were testifying today. Mueller, Trump was not exonerated. And Mr. Mueller, what you know is that this can't say Mueller exonerated Trump, because you don't have the power or authority to exonerate Trump. You have no more power to declare him exonerated than you have the power to declare him Anderson Cooper. So the problem that I have here is that since there's no one in the criminal justice system that has that power, the president pardons, he doesn't exonerate. Courts and juries don't declare innocent, they declare not guilty. They don't even declare exoneration. The statement about exoneration is misleading, and it's meaningless, and it colors this investigation one word out of the entire portion of your report, and it's a meaningless word that has no legal meaning, and it has colored your entire
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Exactly.
You believe should have been in there. That, you
Not that I can recall, no.
yield the balance of my time to Mr. Director. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Good afternoon, Director Mueller. In your May 29th press conference, and again in your opening remarks this morning, you made it pretty clear you wanted the special counsel report to speak for itself. You said at your press conference that that was the office's final position, and we will not comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president. Now, you spent the last few hours of your life from Democrats trying to get you to answer all kinds of hypotheticals about the president, and I expect that it may continue for the next few hours of your life. I think you've stayed pretty much true to what your intent and desire was, but I guess regardless of that, the special counsel's office is closed and it has no continuing jurisdiction or authority. So what would be your authority or jurisdiction for adding new conclusions or determinations to the special counsel's written report?
As for the latter, I don't know or expect a change in the conclusions that we included in our report.
So to that point, you addressed one of the issues that I needed to, which was from your testimony this morning, which some construed as a change to the written report. You talked about the exchange that you had with Congressman Lieu. I wrote it down a little bit different. I want to ask you about it so that the record's perfectly clear. I recorded that he asked you, quote, the reason you did not indict Donald Trump is because of the OLC opinion stating you cannot indict a sitting president, to which you responded, that is correct. That response is inconsistent. I think you'll agree with your written report. I want to be clear that it is not your intent to change your written report. It is your intent to clarify the record to that.
As I started today, this afternoon, and added either a footnote or an endnote, what I wanted to clarify is the fact that we did not make any determination with regard to culpability in any way. We did not start that process down the road.
Terrific. Thank you for clarifying the record. The stated purpose of your appointment as special counsel was to ensure a full and thorough investigation of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. As part of that full and thorough investigation, what determination did the special counsel office make about whether the Steele dossier was part of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election?
Again, when it comes to Mr. Steele, I defer to the Department of Justice.
Well,
That's your predicate for doing your goddamn job, you moron. And you can't comment on something that's part of your fucking investigation?
first of all, Director, I very much agree with your determination that Russia's efforts were sweeping and systematic. I think it should concern every American. That's why I want to know just how sweeping and systematic those efforts were. I want to find out if Russia interfered with our election by providing false information through sources to Christopher Steele about a Trump conspiracy that you determined didn't exist.
Well, again, I'm not going to discuss the issues with regard to Mr. Steele. And in terms of a portrayal of the conspiracies, we
Lawyer,
two
lawyer,
indictments
lawyer,
in the
lawyer.
computer crimes arena. One GRU and another act of measures in which we lay out in excruciating detail what occurred in those two rather large conspiracies.
I agree with respect to that, but why this is important is an application and 3 renewal applications were submitted by the United States government to spy or surveil on Trump campaign Carter associate, or Carter Page, and on all 4 occasions the United States government submitted the Steele dossier as a central piece of evidence with respect to that. Now the basic premise of the dossier, as you know, was that there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, but the special counsel investigation didn't establish any conspiracy, correct?
Well, what I can tell you is that the events that you are characterizing here now is part of another matter that is being handled by the Department of Justice.
But you did not establish any conspiracy, much less a well-developed one.
Again, I pass on answering that question.
It's your fucking report, you moron.
The special counsel did not charge Carter Page with anything, correct?
Special counsel did not.
All right. My time has expired.
Person is above the law. And many times recently they add not even the president, which I think is blazingly obvious to most of us.
I'm having a little problem hearing you, sir.
Is this better?
That is better, thank you.
I want you to know I agree with this statement that no person is above the law. But there's another principle that we also have to defend, and that is the presumption of innocence. And I'm sure you agree with this principle, though I think the way that your office phrased some parts of your report, it does make me wonder. I have to be honest with you. For going on 3 years, innocent people have been accused of very serious crimes, including treason. Accusations made even here today. They have had their lives disrupted and in some cases destroyed by false accusations for which there is absolutely no basis other than some people desperately wish that it was so. But your report is very clear. No evidence of conspiracy, no evidence of coordination. And I believe we owe it to these people who have been falsely accused, including the president and his family, to make that very clear. Mr. Mueller, the credibility of your report is based on the integrity of how it is handled. And there's something that I think bothers me and other Americans. I'm holding here in my hand a binder of 25 examples of leaks that occurred from the special counsel's office from those who associated with your work, dating back to as early as a few weeks after your inception in the beginning of your work and continuing up to just a few months ago. All of them have one thing in common. They were designed to weaken or to embarrass the president. Every single one. Never was it leaked that you'd found no evidence of collusion. Never was it leaked that the Steele dossier was a complete fantasy, nor that it was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign. I could go on and on. Mr. Mueller, are you aware of anyone from your team having given advance knowledge of the raid on Roger Stone's home to any person or the press, including CNN?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics. I will mention, but talk for a moment about persons who become involved in an investigation. And the understanding that in a lengthy, thorough investigation, some persons will be under a cloud that should not be under a cloud. And one of the reasons for emphasizing, as I have, the speed of an election, not election, the speed of an investigation, is that so those persons who are disrupted as a result of the...
He's wasting your time.
No. As a result of that investigation.
Thank you, and you're right, it is a cloud, and it's an unfair cloud for dozens of people. But to my point, are you aware of anyone providing information to the media regarding the raid on Roger Stone's home, including CNN?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Okay. Mr. Mueller, you sent a letter dated March 27th to Attorney General Barr in which you claim the Attorney General's memo to Congress did not fully capture the context of your report. You stated earlier today that response was not authorized. Did you make any effort to determine who leaked this confidential letter?
No, and I'm not certain. This is the letter of March 27th?
Yes, sir.
I'm not certain when it was publicized. I didn't know it was publicized, but I do not believe we would be responsible for the leaks.
Well,
I do believe that we have done
oh
a
my
good
God.
job in assuring that no leaks occur.
We have 25 examples here of where you did not do a good job. Not you, sir. I'm not accusing you at all. But where your office did not do a good job in protecting this information. One more example. Do you know anyone who anonymously made claims to the press that Attorney General Barr's March 24th letter to Congress had been misrepresented or misrepresented the basis of your report?
And what was the question?
Oh, are you serious?
Anonymously made claims to the press that Attorney General Barr's March 24th letter to Congress had misrepresented the findings of your report?
No.
So, given these examples as well as others, you must have realized that leaks were coming from someone associated with the special counsel's office. But I'd like to ask you,
I do not believe that.
Then where would it have come
sir,
from?
This was your work. You're the only one, your office is the only one who had information.
That's right.
regarding this.
That's
It had
his
to
work
come from your
product.
office. Putting that aside,
That's his
which
work
leads me to
product.
my
He owns
final
it.
question. Did you do anything about it?
From the outset, we've undertaken to make certain that we minimize the possibility of leaks. And I think we were successful over the 2 years that we
Are
were
you serious?
Well, I wish you'd been more successful, sir. I think it was disruptive to the American people.
I can
My
respond
time
to
has
that.
expired. I yield.
correct. And we don't know what we don't know.
Why is it so important that witnesses cooperate and tell the truth in an investigation like this?
As the testimony of the witnesses goes to the heart of just about any criminal case you have.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back. And thank you, Director Mueller.
Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mueller, as special counsel, did you review documents related to the origin of the counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign?
On occasion.
Was the Steele dossier one of those documents that was reviewed?
And I can't discuss that case.
I'm just asking a process question. Have you read the Steele dossier?
And again, I'm not going to respond to that.
You were tasked as special counsel to investigate whether there was collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign associates to interfere with the 2016 election. And the FBI, we know, has relevant documents and information related to the opening of the CI investigation. Were you and your team permitted to access all of those documents?
And again, I can't get into that investigative, what we collected, what we're doing with investigation materials.
Let me ask it this way. Was there any limitation in your access to documents related to the counterintelligence?
That's such a broad question. I have real trouble answering.
Did the special counsel's office undertake any efforts to investigate and verify or disprove allegations contained in the Steele dossier?
Again, I can't respond.
The reason I'm asking for the American public that is watching, it's apparent that the Steele dossier formed part of the basis to justify the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. As we know, it was used to obtain a FISA warrant on Carter Page. This is why I'm asking these questions. Did your office undertake any efforts to identify Steele's sources or subsources?
Again, the same answer.
Were these tasks referred to any other agencies?
Again, I can't speak to it.
Did your office consider whether the Russian government used Steele's sources to provide Steele with disinformation?
Again, I can't speak to that.
I understand I'm asking these questions just for the record, so thanks for your patience. Shifting gears here, did any member of the special counsel's office staff travel overseas as part of the investigation?
Yes, but I can't go further than that.
I'm going to ask, to which countries?
And I can't answer that.
Did they meet with foreign government officials?
Again, it's out of our bailiwick.
Did they meet with foreign private citizens?
Again, same response.
Did they seek information about a U.S. citizen or any U.S.
Again,
citizens?
in territory that I cannot go to.
Thank you for answering on the record. These are important questions for the American public, and we're hopeful that the IG is able to answer these questions. I will yield the balance of my time to the ranking member.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Mueller, I want to go back to, we started off with Joseph Mifsud, who's at the center of this investigation. He appears in your report a dozen times or more. He really is the epicenter. He's at the origin of this. He's the man who supposedly knows about Clinton's emails. You've seen on the screen, the Democrats have continually put up all the prosecutions that you made against Trump campaign officials and others. But I'm struggling to understand why you didn't indict Joseph Mifsud, who seems to be the man in the middle of all of this.
Well, I think you understand that you cannot get into either classified or law enforcement information without a rationale for doing it. And I have said going to be able to say with regard to Mr. Mifsud.
What?
Were you aware of Kathleen Kavalek's involvement, that she had met with Ms. Steele, the State Department official?
Again, I can't respond to that question. It's outside my jurisdiction.
Oh, are you serious?
The Carter Page FISA warrant was re-upped 3 times. The last time it was re-upped was under your watch. So were you in the approval process of that last time that the Carter Page warrant was?
Well, I can't speak specifically about that warrant, but if you ask was I in the approval chain? The answer is no.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr.
From Georgia, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're moving, I don't understand, just reiterating the 5-minute rule. Mr. Mueller, I have several questions, many of which that you just answered will be questioned here in a moment, but I want to lay some foundation, so we'll go through these fairly quickly. I'll talk slowly. I'm said that I talk fast. I will talk slowly.
You do talk fast, but
In
it's
your press
okay.
conference, you stated any testimony from your office would not go beyond our report. We chose these words carefully. The word speaks for itself. I would not provide information beyond that which is already public in any appearance before Congress. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
Since closing the special counsel's office in May of 2019, have you conducted any additional interviews or obtained any new information in your role as special counsel?
In the wake of the report,
Since the closing of the office in May of 2019,
and the question was,
have you conducted any new interviews and any new witnesses?
No.
And you can confirm you're no longer special counsel, correct?
I am no longer special counsel.
At any time with the investigation, was your investigation curtailed or stopped or hindered?
No.
Were you or your team provided any questions by members of Congress of the majority ahead of your hearing today?
No.
Your report states that your investigative team included 19 lawyers and approximately 40 FBI agents and analysts and accountants. Are those numbers accurate?
Could you repeat that, please?
40 FBI agents, 19 lawyers, intelligence analysts, and forensic accountants. Are those numbers accurate? This was included in your report.
Generally, yes.
Is it also true that you issued over 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, obtained more than 230 orders for communication records, and 50 pen registers?
That went a little fast for me.
Okay.
You're an idiot. You're
In your
stalling.
I'll make this very simple. You did a lot of work, correct?
Yes, that I agree
A
with.
lot of subpoenas, a lot of pen
A lot of
registers.
subpoenas. Yes.
Okay, we'll walk this really slow if we
A lot
need
of
to.
search warrants.
All right, a lot of search warrants, a lot of things. So you're very thorough.
What?
In your opinion, very thorough. You listed this out in your report, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Is it true, the evidence gathered during your investigation, given the questions that you have just answered, is it true the evidence gathered during your investigation did not establish that the president was involved in the underlying crime related to Russian election interference as stated in Volume 1, page 7?
We found insufficient evidence of the president's culpability
So that would be a yes.
without, on part.
That would be a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Isn't it true the evidence did not establish that the president or those close to him were involved in the charged Russian computer hacking or active measure conspiracies, or that the president otherwise had unlawful relationships with any Russian official? Volume 2, page 76, correct?
I leave the answer to our report.
So that's a yes. Is that any true your investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with Russian government in the election interference activity? Volume 1, page 2, Volume 1, page 173.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Although your report states collusion is not so specific offense, and you said that this morning, or a term of art in federal criminal law, conspiracy is. In the colloquial context, are collusion and conspiracy essentially synonymous terms?
No.
You have to repeat that for me.
You're an idiot.
Collusion is not a specific offense or a term of art in the federal
You heard
criminal
neither,
law.
all right.
Conspiracy is.
Now all of a
In the
sudden you can't
colloquial
hear?
context, known public context, collusion and conspiracy are essentially synonymous terms, correct?
No.
If no, on page 180 of volume 1 of your report, you wrote, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in the General Federal Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371. You said at your May 29th press conference and here today, you choose your words carefully. Are you sitting here today testifying something different than what your report states?
Well, what I'm asking is if you can give me the citation, I can look at the citation and evaluate
Busted, motherfucker. You just got popped.
whether it is.
Okay, let me just be clarified. You stated that you would stay within the report. I just stated your report back to you. And you said that collusion and conspiracy were not synonymous terms. That was your answer was no.
Correct.
In that, page 180 of volume 1 of your report, it says, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in General Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371. Now, you said you chose your words carefully. Are you contradicting your report right now?
Not when I read it.
So you would change your answer to yes then?
No. If you look at the language,
I'm reading your report, sir. It's a yes or no answer.
Page 180,
Page 180, volume 1. This was from your report.
correct. And
So the report says, yes, they are synonymous. Hopefully for finally, out of your own report, we can put to bed the collusion and conspiracy. One last question as we're going through. Did you ever look into other countries investigating in the Russian interference into our election? Were other countries investigated or found knowledge that they had interference in our election?
I'm not going to discuss other matters.
That I yield back.
Tweeted to
Gentleman
Peter
yields
Strzok. He
back.
texted about his concern that there is, quote, no big there in the Trump campaign investigation. Did he or anyone else who worked on the FBI's investigation tell you that around 10 months into the investigation, the FBI still had no case for collusion?
No.
Is the Inspector General report correct that the text messages from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page's phones from your office were not retained after they left the special counsel's office?
Well, I don't, it depends on what you're talking about. The investigation into those Peter Strzok went on for a period of time, and I'm not certain what it encompasses. It may well have encompassed what you're adverting to.
Okay, let me move on just real quickly. Did you ask the department to authorize your office to investigate the origin of the Trump-Russia investigation?
I'm not going to get into that. It goes to internal deliberations.
So the circumstances surrounding the origin of the investigation have yet to be fully vetted then. I'm certainly glad that Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney Durham are looking into this matter. With that, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to the Ranking Member Nunes.
Thank the gentleman for yielding.
Get him, Devin.
Mr. Mueller, I want to make sure you're aware of who Fusion GPS is. Fusion GPS is a political operations firm that was working directly for the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee. They produced the dossier, so they paid Steele, who then went out and got the dossier. And I know you don't want to answer any dossier questions, so I'm not going there, but your report mentions Natalia Vesnitskaya 65 times. She meets in the Trump Tower. It's this infamous Trump Tower meeting. It's in your report. You've heard many of the Democrats refer to it today. The meeting was shorter than 20 minutes, I believe. Is that correct?
I think what we have in our report reflects it was about that length.
So, do you know, so Fusion GPS, the main actor at Fusion GPS, the president of the company, or the owner of the company, is a guy named Glenn Simpson who's working for Hillary Clinton. Glenn Simpson, do you know how many times Glenn Simpson met with Natalia Vesnitskaya?
Myself? No.
Would it surprise you that the Clinton campaign dirty ops arm met with Natalia Vesnitskaya more times than the Trump campaign did?
Well, this is an area that I'm not going to get into, as I indicated at the outset.
Did you ever interview Glenn Simpson?
I'm going to pass on that.
According to, I'm going to change topics here. According to notes from the State Department official Kathleen Kavalak, Christopher Steele told her that former Russian intelligence head Trubnikov and Putin advisor Surkov were sources for the Steele dossier. Now, knowing that these are, not getting into whether these sources were real or not real, was there any concern that there could have been disinformation that was going from the Kremlin into the Clinton campaign and then being fed into the FBI?
As I said before, this is an area that I cannot speak to.
Is that because it's not in the report, or or because of an ongoing
Internal
investigation?
deliberations, other proceedings, and the like.
Okay. When Andrew Weissman and Zainab Ahmed joined your team, were you aware that Bruce Orr, Department of Justice top official, directly briefed the dossier allegations to them in the summer of 2016?
Again, I'm not going to speak to that issue.
Okay. Before you arrested George Papadopoulos in July of 2017, he was given $10,000 in cash in Israel. Do you know who gave him that cash?
Again, that's outside our ambit, and questions such as that should go to the FBI or the department.
But it involved your investigation.
It involved persons involved in my investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will stand in recess for 5 or 10 minutes. Please, folks, remain in your seats. Allow the director, Mr. Zedley, to exit the chamber. Strategy, their messaging strategy around those stolen documents?
Generally, that's true.
And then they lied to cover it up.
Generally, that's true.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes.
Thank you. Welcome, Director. As a former FBI director, you'd agree that the FBI is the world's most capable law enforcement agency.
I would say yes.
The FBI claims the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign began on July 31st, 2016. But in fact, it began before that. In June 2016, before the investigation officially opened, Trump campaign associates Carter Page and Stephen Miller, a current Trump advisor, were invited to attend a symposium at Cambridge University in July 2016. Your office, however, did not investigate who was responsible for inviting these Trump associates to this symposium. Your investigators also failed to interview Stephen Schrage, an American citizen who helped organize the event and invited Carter Page to it. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Whether or not you interviewed Stephen Schrage, who organized the Cambridge.
In those areas, I am going to stay away from.
The first Trump associate to be investigated was General Flynn. Many of the allegations against him stem from false media reports that he had an affair with a Cambridge academic, Svetlana Lokova, and that Lokova was a Russian spy. Some of these allegations were made public in a 2017 article written by British intelligence historian Christopher Andrew. Your report fails to reveal how or why Andrew and his collaborator, Richard Dearlove, former head of Britain's MI6, spread these allegations. And you failed to interview Svetlana Lokova about these matters. Is that correct?
I'm not going to get into those matters to which you refer.
You had a team of 19 lawyers, 40 agents, and an unlimited budget, correct, Mr. Mueller?
I would not say we had an unlimited budget.
Let's continue with the opening of the investigation, supposedly on July 31st, 2016. The investigation was not opened based on an official product from Five Eyes Intelligence, but based on a rumor conveyed by Alexander Downer. On Volume 1, page 89, your report describes him blandly as a representative of a foreign government. But he was actually a long-time Australian politician, not a military or intelligence official, who had previously arranged a $25 million donation to the Clinton Foundation and has previous ties to Dearlove. So Downer conveys a rumor he supposedly heard about a conversation between Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud. James Comey has publicly called Mifsud a Russian agent, yet your report does not refer to Mifsud as a Russian agent. Mifsud has extensive contacts with Western governments and the FBI. For example, there is a recent photo of him standing next to Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. What we're trying to figure out here, Mr. Mueller, is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson have been compromised. So we're trying to figure out, Comey says Mifsud is a Russian agent, you do not. So do you stand by what's in the report?
I stand by that which is in the report, and not so necessarily with that which is not in the report.
I want to return to Mr. Downer. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails, and in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning to Papadopoulos. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails, and in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning them to Papadopoulos in the first place. So how does the FBI know to continually ask Papadopoulos about Clinton's emails for the rest of 2016? Even more strangely, your sentencing memo on Papadopoulos blames him for hindering the FBI's ability to potentially detain or arrest Mifsud. But The truth is, Mifsud waltzed in and out of the United States in December 2016. The U.S. media could find him, the Italian press found him, and he's a supposed Russian agent at the epicenter of the purported collusion conspiracy. He's the guy who knows about Hillary Clinton's emails and that the Russians have them. But the FBI failed to question him for a half a year after officially opening the investigation. And then, according to Volume 1, page 193 of your report, once Mifsud finally was questioned, he made false statements to the FBI. But you declined to charge him. Is that correct? You did not indict Mr. Mifsud?
I'm not going to speak to the series of happenings as you articulated them.
But you did not indict Mr.
Time of
Mifsud?
the gentleman has expired.
About 25 times. I've got to say, it looks like volume 2 is mostly regurgitated press report. Then in a footnote, a small footnote, number 7, page 15 of volume 2 of your report, you wrote, I quote, "This section summarizes and cites various news stories not for the truth of the information contained in the stories, but rather to place candidate Trump's response to those stories in context. Since nobody but lawyers reads footnotes, are you concerned that the American public took the embedded news stories?"
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentlelady from Washington.
Can Mr. Mueller
No.
answer the question?
No, we're running short on time.
You dirty
I
bastard.
said the gentlelady from Washington.
Thank
It
you.
is now
Director
my
Mueller.
pleasure to recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Mueller, for being here. For 2 years leading up to the release of the Mueller report, and in the 3 months since, Americans were first told what to expect and then what to believe. Collusion, we were told, was in plain sight, even if the special counsel's team didn't find it. When Mr. Mueller produced his report and Attorney General Barr provided it to every American, we read no American conspired with Russia to interfere in our elections, but learned the depths of Russia's malice toward America. We are here to ask serious questions about Mr. Mueller's work, and we will do that. After an extended, unhampered investigation, today marks an end to Mr. Mueller's involvement in an investigation that closed in April. The burden of proof for accusations that remain unproven is extremely high, and especially in light of the special counsel's thoroughness. We are told this investigation began as an inquiry into whether Russia meddled in our 2016 election. Mr. Mueller, you concluded they did. Russians accessed Democrat servers and disseminated sensitive information by tricking campaign insiders into revealing protected information. The investigation also reviewed whether Donald Trump, the president, sought Russian assistance as a candidate to win the presidency. Mr. Mueller concluded he did not. His family or advisors did not. In fact, the report concludes no one in the president's campaign colluded, collaborated, or conspired with the Russians. The president watched the public narrative surrounding this investigation, assumed his guilt while he knew the extent of his innocence. Volume 2 of Mr. Mueller's report details the president's reaction to a frustrating investigation where his innocence was established early on. The president's attitude toward the investigation was understandably negative, yet the president did not use his authority to close the investigation. He asked his lawyer if Mr. Mueller had conflicts that disqualified Mr. Mueller from the job, but he did not shut down the investigation. The president knew he was innocent. Those are the facts of the Mueller report. Russia meddled in the 2016 election, the president did not conspire with the Russians, and nothing we hear today will change those facts. But one element of this story remains: the beginnings of the FBI investigation into the president. I look forward to Mr. Mueller's testimony about what he found during his review of the origins of the investigation. In addition, the Inspector General continues to review how baseless gossip can be used to launch an FBI investigation against a private citizen and eventually a president. Those results will be released, and we will need to learn from them to ensure government intelligence and law enforcement powers are never again used and turned on a private citizen or a potential or political candidate as a result of the political leanings of a handful of FBI agents. The origins and conclusions of the Mueller investigation are the same things: what it means to be American. Every American has a voice in our democracy, so it must protect the sanctity of their voice by combating election interference. Every American enjoys the presumption of innocence and guarantee of due process. If we carry anything away today, it must be that we increase our vigilance against foreign election interference while we ensure our government officials don't weaponize their power against the constitutional rights guaranteed to every U.S. citizen. Finally, we must agree that the opportunity cost here is too high. The months we have spent investigating from this dais failed to end the border crisis or contribute to the growing job market. Instead, we have gotten stuck, and it's paralyzed this committee and this House. And as a side note, every week I leave my family and kids, the most important things to me, to come to this place because I believe this place is a place where we can actually do things and help people. 6.5 years ago, I came here to work on behalf of the people of the 9th District in this country. And we accomplished a lot in those first 6 years on a bipartisan basis with many of my friends across the aisle sitting on this dais with me today. However, this year, because the majority's dislike of this president and the endless hearing into a closed investigation have caused us to accomplish nothing except talk about the problems of our country while our border is on fire and crisis and everything else is stopped. This hearing is long overdue. We have had truth for months. No American conspired to throw our election. What we need today is to let that truth bring us confidence, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, closure with that.
Situations and not reaching a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mueller over here. Hi. I want to start by thanking you for your service. You joined the Marines and led a rifle platoon in Vietnam, where you earned a Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and other commendations. You served as an assistant United States attorney leading the homicide unit here in D.C.
What a way to kill your career.
Massachusetts and later Northern District of California.
I see it going up in flames as we speak.
Criminal Division and the FBI Director. So thank you. I appreciate that. Having reviewed your biography, it puzzles me why you handled your duties in this case the way you did. The report contradicts what you taught young attorneys at the Department of Justice, including to ensure that every defendant is treated fairly, or as Justice Sutherland said in the Berger case, a prosecutor is not the representative of an ordinary party to a controversy, but of a sovereignty, whose interest in a criminal prosecution is not that it shall win a case, but that justice shall be done, and that the prosecutor may strike hard blows, but he is not at liberty to strike foul ones. By listing the 10 factual situations and not reaching a conclusion about the merits of the case, you unfairly shifted the burden of proof to the president, forcing him to prove his innocence while denying him a legal forum to do so. And I've never heard of a prosecutor declining a case and then holding a press conference to talk about the defendant. You noted 8 times in your report that you had a legal duty under the regulations to either prosecute or decline charges. Despite this, you disregarded that duty. As a former prosecutor, I'm also troubled with your legal analysis. You discussed 10 separate factual patterns involving alleged obstruction, and then you failed to separately apply the elements of the applicable statutes. I looked at the 10 factual situations, and I read the case law. And I have to tell you, just looking at the Flynn matter, for example, the 4 statutes that you cited for possible obstruction, 1503, 1505, 1512b3 and 1512c2. When I look at those concerning the Flynn matter, 1503 is inapplicable because there wasn't a grand jury or trial jury impaneled, and Director Comey was not an officer of the court as defined by the statute. Section 1505 criminalizes acts that would obstruct or impede administrative proceedings as those before Congress or an administrative agency. The Department of Justice Criminal Resource Manual states that the FBI investigation is not a pending proceeding. 1512b3 talks about intimidation, threats of force to tamper with a witness. General Flynn at the time was not a witness, and certainly Director Comey was not a witness. And 1512c2 talks about tampering with a record. And as Joe Biden described the statute as being debated on the Senate floor, he called this a statute criminalizing document shredding, and there's nothing in your report that alleges that the president destroyed any evidence. So what I have to ask you, and what I think people are working around in this hearing is, let me lay a little foundation for it. The ethical rules require that a prosecutor have a reasonable probability of conviction to bring a charge. Is that correct?
Sounds generally accurate.
Okay. And the regulations concerning your job as special counsel state that your job is to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by your office. You recommended declining prosecution of President Trump and anyone associated with his campaign because there was insufficient evidence to convict for a charge of conspiracy with Russian interference in the 2016 election. Is that fair?
Fair.
Was there sufficient evidence to convict President Trump or anyone else with obstruction of justice?
We did not make that calculation.
How could you not have made the calculation with
Because
the regulation?
the OLC opinion, Office of Legal Counsel, indicates that we cannot indict a sitting president. So one of the tools that a prosecutor would use is not there.
Okay, but let me just stop. You made the decision on the Russian interference. You couldn't have indicted the president on that, and you made the decision on that. But when it came to obstruction, you threw a bunch of stuff up against the wall to see what would stick. And that is fundamentally unfair.
I would not agree to that characterization.
You just got busted, motherfucker. Your whole career went down the shithole today. Look at his lawyer over here. Those are his handlers right there. And then you got that guy that's his assistant, who is the IT guy for Hillary Clinton, lawyer for the Clintons. This whole fucking bunch up here in front. There's your crooks in Washington in the law field.
At all. What we did is provide to the Attorney General in the form of a confidential memorandum our understanding of the case. Those cases that were brought, those cases were declined, and that one case where the president cannot be charged with a crime.
Okay, but could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Ethically, under the ethical standards?
Well, I'm not certain because I haven't looked at the ethical standards, but the OLC opinion says that the prosecutor, while he cannot bring a charge against the sitting president, nonetheless he can continue the investigation to see if there are any other persons who might be drawn into the conspiracy.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Rhode Island.
I'm not going to talk to that.
Well, from what I can tell, sir, at one point it was vital, and then at another point it wasn't vital. And my question to you is, why did it stop being vital? And I can only think of three explanations. One is that somebody told you couldn't do it, but nobody told you couldn't subpoena the president. Is that right?
No, we understood we could subpoena the president.
Rosenstein didn't tell you, Whitaker didn't tell you, Barr didn't tell you couldn't.
We could serve a subpoena.
So the only other explanation, well, there's two others, I guess. One, that you just flinched. That you had the opportunity to do it and you didn't do it. But sir, you don't strike me as the kind of guy who flinches.
I hope not.
Well, then the third explanation, I hope not too, sir. And the third explanation I can think of is that you didn't think you needed it. And in fact, what caught my eye was page 13 on volume 2, where you said, in fact, you had a substantial body of evidence. And you cite a bunch of cases there, don't you, about how you often have to prove intent to obstruct justice without an in-person interview. That's the kind of nature of it. And you use terms like a substantial body of evidence, significant evidence of the president's intent. So my question, sir, is, did you have sufficient evidence of the president's intent to obstruct justice, and is that why you didn't do the interview?
There's a balance. In other words, how much evidence you have to satisfy the last element against how much time are you willing to spend in the courts litigating the interview with the president.
And in this case, you felt that you had enough evidence of the president's intent.
We had to make a balanced decision in terms of how much evidence we had compared to the length of time it would take.
And sir, because I have limited time, you thought that if you gave it to the Attorney General or to this Congress, that there was sufficient evidence that it was better than that delay.
Can you state that again?
Well, that it was better than the delay to present the sufficient evidence, your term, of the president's intent to obstruct justice to the Attorney General and to this committee. Isn't that why you didn't do the interview?
The reason we didn't do the interview is because of the length of time that it would take to resolve the issues attendant to that.
Thank you, sir.